beautiful day it is here on Yaquina Bay, overlooking the bridge, and it's really a neat one. Today I'm going to tell the story that happened back in the early 60s on the Columbia River. It was a stormy night, blowing 35 miles to 40 miles an hour. The bar was rough, it was periods of rain, and we got a call from a ship. And they had a man on board. He was an epileptic, and he had fallen. And when he fell down, he hit his head on one of the steel plates and split his head open. And they said it was very serious, and that he had strange things coming out of the blood, like he might have broke in his skull. And they wanted to get him off as soon as possible. They figured it was life-threatening. And so they called the Coast Guard. We got the call. I was in charge of the station at Cape Disappointment. And so we took the 52 and we went out. And the bar was pretty rough when we went out, but it was just the top of high water, and it was going to be the best for that night. And I got a hold of the ship. He was about 5 miles away and out to the southwest. And I got a hold of him, and I told him the best course to take so we would have a lee up alongside. And the swells were running 20 feet or foot or better higher on the big swells. So the captain said, very well, he could slow down to 5 knots. And I said, that's fine, that's just half my speed, but that would be fine. And the 52-foot lifeboat, it weighed 33 tons. And when you got up alongside the ship with it, it was easy to pretty well handle the swell and the rise and the fall of it with that extra weight. We didn't get flipped away from the ship so fast. So we made the approach, and as we were making the approach, the helicopter came on out. And the captain of the helicopter, probably a lieutenant commander or lieutenant, called and he says, hold up 52. I have a doctor on board, and we're going to attempt to drop the doctor on the ship to assess the patient's condition. I said, Roger. So we waited there, and the chopper circled over the ship and tried to lower the basket down, but with the ship's rigging and the booms that they had on board, and the ship moving back and forth, it was almost impossible to get a man on board, especially with the wind blowing 35 to 40 miles an hour. So the chopper called me and he said, no, he said, what we're going to do, we're going to lower the man to you, and then you can put him on the ship. And I said, very well. He said, you'll have to head, and he gave me the direction he wanted me to head, and it was the opposite direction. I wanted to go alongside the ship, going the same way distance as the ship was going. And I said, well, very well, but that'll make me going the opposite way of the ship, and it will reduce my time of having a lee alongside the ship, because he's going one way and I'm going the other. And he says, well, we can do that. And I said, okay, very well. And so I positioned myself at one end of the ship, and he's going the other way, and I held him back, and here comes the chopper overhead. And just as he gets overhead, he says, all right, he said, we'll hold that position, I'll be right back. And he takes off in the night, heading off into the darkness. And I said, what's he doing? What's he doing? I didn't understand why he didn't lower the man on board. And I waited 1, 2, it seemed like about 3 minutes, and here comes the chopper right back overhead, right directly above us. By this time, I'd lost over half the distance that I needed for the lee alongside the ship. And we're going up and down, and we're rolling pretty good in the wind. And as I got right up alongside the ship, here comes the man being lowered down. He was in the basket, and he gets about 10, 15 feet just above us, and a huge swell came along, and we dropped off the swell. And when we did that, we dropped out of sight of the helicopter for a few seconds. But the helicopter, when they lose sight of somebody like that and they're so close to the water, they have nothing to do but just go up. And the chopper went up immediately, and I could hear the doctor in the basket going, oh! And he disappeared into the darkness. And I said, oh my God, I hope they get him back on board. He don't fall out of the basket, because he was swinging back and forth, and as the chopper went up, he just kind of swung back out into the darkness. So anyway, the chopper called back, and I said, you want to try it again? And he said, no, it's too dangerous. He said, you go alongside the ship and take the injured man off, and we'll meet you at the dock with the doctor. I said, very well. So I called the ship and I said, I'm coming alongside. So I turned back around so I could have the same direction as the ship was going and still have the lee. And we came up alongside and they said, we have a Stokes litter. Now a Stokes litter is a wire basket a man can lay into, and it has little ridges there so their feet and legs can lay in there, and there's handles on the Stokes litter so you can handle it pretty good. And as we came up alongside the ship, I made one pass and we came right up to the main deck of the ship, and I said, oh, okay, this is going to be perfect. And they got the Stokes litter pushed out over the side of there, and the crew was holding on, and the second time the 52 rose up in the air and they slid the basket over. My crew grabbed it and immediately took it to the deck, and he says, very well, you got him. And so I said, okay, and I backed down and swerved away from the ship, and the ship went off in the distance. They said, the captain called and said, thank you very much, very much. We really appreciate you getting this man off. And I said, well, roger on that. I said, we'll take him to the hospital. And we brought the Stokes litter up. There's the main deck, and there's a few steps going up through the watertight hatch to get down below. And they brought the man up there, and one of my crewmen came up to me and said, here, Chief, they gave me this. And I said, what is it? And it was a little pouch. And he said, they said it was the keys to the handcuffs. I said, oh, handcuffs? And I looked at the Stokes litter, and here's the victim laying down in the Stokes litter, and they had him tied in there really tight, and they had the handcuffs around his wrists, and they were tied off to the side, so he could not move. He was like this. And I says, oh, okay. And the patient, he kind of looked up and he says, just get me out of here. Just get me out of these handcuffs. He says, I'll be fine. I'll be really good. And I says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have to put you down below, and it's going to be really moving around. So I'll take him off a little later. And he says, well, can't you do it now? I said, no. I said, we're going to be pretty busy. And so we brought him on up in the Stokes litter. We opened up the watertight hatch. You have to kind of stoop to get into it. Enough room to get him into the main pilot house. And then the steps go on down to the mess deck, and it's all watertight compartments. And the Stokes litter just barely fit down in there. And so one of the seamen that was helping get him in there, he was inside the pilot house standing there. To get out, he'd have to crawl over the man. To get down below, he'd have to just go right over his legs and down. He was stuck in there, but we could close the watertight hatch, and that was a really important thing because it was pretty rough out. I said, very well. So we're heading back to the bar. It's going to take me, we're about 5-6 miles away, so it's going to take me a good half hour to get up to the bar. And on the Columbia River bar, there's the lightship that sits out there 7 miles out, and then 3 miles in is number 2 buoy on the starboard side going in, and then 2, 4, 6, and 8. And they're all a mile apart. So I figure I'll come up to about number 4, and then I can work my way in from that time. And about that time, the pilot boat, Columbia River pilot boat, we worked with them quite a bit all out there, and they had been listening to all this going on in the air and talking back and forth with the chopper and our boat. So they called me and they says, Coast Guard 52-footer, we just came across the bar here 20 minutes ago, and we want to advise you that we're closing the bar down to all shipping. There's 25-foot swells on the bar, and so they're starting to break, and the tide is just starting to ebb. By the time you get up there, it will be advisable not to cross if you can possibly do that. And I said, well, roger on that. I'm going to have to try to come on in. I have a man on board with life-threatening injuries, and I don't want to lay out here 6-7 hours waiting. I said, it could be detrimental to him. They said, very well, good luck. So when I got to the bar, number 4, and started working my way in, well, number 8 buoy, which is just inside the south jetty, and when the tide is ebbing and big swells, the old saying is stay away from number 8. That really gets rough in there, and the swells are close together and big breakers, and a lot of boats capsize right in that area. So I'm kind of easing to the other side of the channel, heading over towards number 7 and 9 to give me and the bar there is 2 miles across between jetties, so you have a good mile of entrance in deep water. So I'm holding to the port side, and that's the left side of it, and going on in. And of course, we had the man inside there, and I said, okay, fine, this is it. And I put the hatch down. Well, this time the man, he had really quieted down. He got seasick. And of course, laying in Stokes litter on an angle going down, being seasick, every time he'd heave, it just running down. We had no way to catch anything. And of course, the poor seaman that's inside watching him, he gets seasick. And I said, this is too bad. I got to close this watertight hatch. And I closed the hatch on down, and they were in there. Well, it took a good half hour or better to cross the roughest part of the bar, and 2 or 3 times great big swells come up and they break right alongside of us, just one after the other, and the rest of the crew says, oh my God. But we made it all the way up to number 10 buoy, and by that time everything is slowing down, so I opened up the hatch, and the poor seaman said, let me out of here, and we kind of grabbed him and drug him halfway over the guy and got him on out so he could get some fresh air. And the patient inside, he started coming around now. It was coming down, and he says, untie me, get me loose. And I says, yeah. I said, loosen up the ties on him a little bit. He said, take the handcuffs off. And I took the little pouch of handcuffs and I hand them to the man next to me, probably the engineer. And I said, here, hold this. And he said, get me out of these handcuffs. And I said, I don't have the key. And I didn't want to lie to him, and so I didn't have the key. My engineer had the key. And I said, I don't have the key. I didn't want to do the handcuffs. I didn't know what he was going to do. And he said, well, untie me. And I said, well, I'll loosen the lines a little bit. He said, I want out of here. And he started screaming and yelling. I said, tighten him up, get another line around him. And so we really tightened up the lines and put another line around his chest so he couldn't up and down. And I called, and I said, into the main station, I said, what's the word? And they said, they want you to take him to Warrington, at the main dock at Warrington. But that's 3 or 4 miles up the river, and the tide's ebbing, so that's going to take us another 45 minutes to an hour by the time we got there. So all the way up the river and into Warrington we go, and we get to the dock, and when we got there, right alongside the dock, this doctor jumped on board, and he said, I'm the doctor that was in the helicopter. And I said, oh, you had quite a ride. He said, yeah. He said, I tried to tell the pilot of the helicopter to one more time. I wanted to ride that 52-footer in. I said, well, you would have got a great ride. I said, we made it. I said, it was pretty close. And he says, okay. He said, well, we're going to take the man. I said, here's the keys to the handcuffs. He said, handcuffs? I said, yeah, they got him handcuffed in there. I said, he gets very violent at times. And he said, well, I don't think the injury is so life-threatening. He said, he's hurt bad. He's got to have some sutures, but he says, he looks pretty good to me after he gave him a little examination there. And I said, well, the captain of the ship probably wanted to get him off there and didn't want to have to take him from there to wherever he was going, down to California or South America or whatever. And he said, okay. And I said, well, thank you, doctor. And he said, well, thank you, guys. And he left. And that was the story of the man that got hit over the head, or when he fell, when he got his head hurt. Anyway, that was the end of the story.